everybody. All right, how's everyone doing today? Good. Doing well? All right, well, I am thankful to be here today. I am thankful for many reasons. I'm thankful to see all of you, all these wonderful faces. I'm thankful for such a wonderful introduction by Gwen, and I've known Gwen for, it's been about 20 years, I would say. And of course, Evelyn I've known probably most of my life, and so I really feel honored and great to be here. And I'm also thankful that I am not feeling any pain today. Thank you. Yes, I am thankful that I'm here, smiling and walking and talking. And as it was shared, I have sickle cell hemoglobin SC disease, very similar to the SS disease. And as a child, I was sick. I would say it was part of my childhood experience. That's part of my story, and part of my testimony, I would say too. That I would probably be sick about at least once a month, give or take, when I was growing up. It could be minor, pain, light pain, to more severe. I've had the acute chest syndrome countless times. And for those of you who may not know, that's when you get a sickle cell crisis, like in your lung, like that. And it's like pneumonia-like symptoms. I had those many times growing up. I've had challenges with my eyesight. I've had laser surgery. Now as an adult, I've had challenges with my hearing. There's all these different things I've experienced with sickle cell and still experience. But I am, thankful to be here and really to share with you, humbly, my experience and also some encouragement and some tips about emergency room advocacy. Emergency room advocacy. Now, I'm just curious now here, how many of you, and I know I met some of you, how many of you here have sickle cell warriors? All right, okay, great, that's wonderful. All right, so how many of you here are providers or work in the medical setting that work with people with sickle cell? Okay, okay, and how many of you here are family or friends of people with sickle cell? Oh, this is great. Wow. Now, because my last question is, how many of you have been with someone with sickle cell going to the emergency room in some capacity or not? Okay, that's good. So, me and the emergency room, that is a long history, very interesting history. Now, I can tell you this one story. It was one night, I was working on the computer, and I was doing really good, I felt. It was reasonable time, maybe about 8 o'clock at night, doing some things, and I was so excited for the next day, because the next day was going to be my birthday. And I was on the computer, and just doing a few things, and then I felt it. It was started very subtle. But it was that little ache, a little nagging moment there in my body. And it started in my knee. And I was thinking, oh, okay, I know this pain. And sometimes it can be a small, subtle ache, And I was at the time on hydroxyurea, and I said, okay, and haven't had major pain episodes in a while. So I said, okay, maybe this will be okay. But then the pain increased and increased to the point where now I'm starting to hobble around the house to get places. And it's throbbing, and it hurts, and it's aching. And I said, okay, I'll still be okay. I know what to do. I'm going to go to the medicine cabinet, take out my medicine. So I took out my medicine and tried to say, okay, I'm going to take it easy. I know my heating pad, so I had to take out, where's my heating pad? I asked my wife, where's the heating pad? Where's the heating pad? And so I had to go get the heating pad and put that on. I said, okay, maybe I'll take my medicine and the heating pad. Tomorrow's my birthday, and we have food planned. We have people RSVP'd. I'm not going to miss this. I'm not going to miss this because of this. Then it continued, and pain increased. Now I had to get off the computer, and it had to be a reasonable time at night now, maybe about 10 o'clock, and I'm going to bed. And I said, okay, maybe tomorrow morning I'll feel better. I have my medicine. I got my heating pad on. My wife's probably going to sleep on the couch because I'm tossing and I'm turning and I'm moaning. You know, I'm shaking in pain. And then it gets to be about 2 a.m. And the pain has not stopped. And it has just continued to ramp up. And then that's when I said, I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. I gotta go in. I gotta go to the emergency room. And the disappointment, the anger that I felt. I've got friends that are gonna be planning, so maybe I can go in and just get some quick morphine and then come back out. But I said, Ed, and my wife's like, Ed, I think it's over. I think we're gonna have to cancel the part. Just so disappointing. And so, for me to get up from bed and to really, I was doing the army crawl to try to get to the bathroom because I couldn't even walk anymore. And to slowly be able to put the pants on and the shoes on and breathe and prepare to get yourself up and to get to the car and then to drive all the way to the emergency room with my wife. And it's now probably 3 a.m. She's tired and her eyes are red and I'm tired and I'm in pain and moaning. And we get to this emergency room. And you know, the thing about it is, I always assumed that they're going to know what to do. I always assumed that they're going to know, how I'm feeling and understand and empathize. But there is that moment when it's like, so what are you here for? Okay, so you have pain. Did you take medicine at home? And then you have to explain yourself. And then you go and you sit, maybe if you're lucky enough, you can get right into a bed. But sometimes I've had to wait in the waiting room for a couple hours before I can even get a bed, let alone wait for the IV. And then I have to explain to them that I have sickle cell and I need morphine. Whoa, you need morphine? For what you're experiencing? So this is a story that plays out time and time again. How do we, as people with sickle cell, advocate for ourselves in a crisis situation? Physical pain crisis, but also it's a life crisis. And sickle cell, I've always experienced it and considered it like it's like a dragon. It's a sleeping dragon that sleeps in my blood and my body, and then all of a sudden, I don't know why, for some reason sometimes, maybe I did something the night before or the day before, or maybe not, it will awake and it will strike. And so then, one thing I want to share with you today is about not only how do we advocate for ourselves, but also really what's happening in the emergency room too. And my hope today is when I get done speaking that what I have to share will inform your mind and encourage your hearts to how we can move forward together, providers and people with sickle cell together, to help support us in this crisis time, in those times of need. Now, something about emergency rooms that we have to consider with sickle cell is, number one, that they are not set up to really deal with chronic, long-term disease. Emergency rooms are there for emergencies, right? They're there for a moment in time when someone needs assistance, and they're not aware or really equipped to be able to handle consistent disease long-term effects. That's why it's so important for us to go to clinics and doctors that know us and that know the conditions that we live in. But see, the challenge here, there is, I would consider, a paradox when it comes to emergency rooms. Because at one end, yeah, they're not equipped for that. But the other side of it is that sometimes it's hard with a person with sickle cell to get to the doctor. Sometimes there's times you have to wait, or, well, we can get you in next Thursday, kind of thing. Or sometimes, I have to wait on hold for a while. it's just, sometimes it's not very easy, that's not even including transportation challenges we might have, too, and other challenges we have to get to the clinic. So emergency room, often for people, at least for people like me, sometimes it's a challenge, it's our last effort, but sometimes it's our only effort we can do. So here it is, I've got a disease that can strike at any moment, and I'm going to a place that doesn't really, is not set up to handle my long-term needs. So another thing about emergency rooms is that they triage patients. This is part of what they do. Triaging, meaning they're going to determine, okay, after your set of symptoms, what you're going to be, I guess, in a category. It's not first come, first serve at emergency rooms. It's not. So there's different hospitals in different states have different ways of doing it. One that's that's frequently used is a scale system of 1 through 5. 1 being the most severe patient, like a gunshot wound or something like that, to 5 being minor. They're not going to be staying. People are not going to stay overnight, that kind of thing. And so the challenge is here is that I could be going through that kind of pain, and someone with just a headache can go in front of me and get the care they need. Because a doctor will see this headache and say, well, is that a stroke? Oh, or is that a migraine? We don't know, so we have to do labs, we're gonna have to do x-rays. But with a sickle cell pain crisis, you can't really do an x-ray for that. You know what I'm saying? Now, I might have other complications going on, like the acute chest syndrome that I had as a kid, or other things, but they may just look at me and hear my symptoms and go, well, you're gonna be maybe a level 4. While this person with a headache who came in after you, we're gonna have them to be a level 2. And they're gonna go and get x-rays and be looked at before you. Now, that's just process. That's not even mentioning the bias that's happening in the system as well. Because you add just that process of triaging, and you add in how we look, right? And who we are in that process. We also have extra hurdles, extra challenges. And I tell you, friends, that is so exhausting to have to go through. And in the middle of this pain, I don't want to have to deal with it. But this is the reality of the state we're in. Friends, this is the reality that we're in. And another added aspect here, another challenge of the ER is the opioid crisis, too. Now, recently I was at a wedding. My wife's cousin got married, and we were there at the reception, and one of my wife's cousins is actually a researcher for the opioid crisis out east. And I talked to him, I said, how's that going? I'm researching that. That's very interesting. He was stationed in Atlanta for a while, then he just got a new job out in Connecticut. And he said, Ed, we are in a crisis. He said that it's way above our heads here. What's happening nationally and the abuse of opioids is just a major, major issue. And what that does for people with sickle cell, it makes it even harder to get the pain medicines we need. Because already before all this, I remember growing up, before all this epidemic happened, it still was a question of, why am I going to give this young person morphine? And are they going to be an addict? Or this is going to be an addiction issue. And now you got that added to it. In addition to cultural, racial bias, in addition to the triaging, makes it really challenging sometimes to get the medicine and the help we need. So then the question is, do we just give up? Do you just say, you know what, I'm choosing not to go down that path because of all these hurdles? I'm just going to try to figure out another way to get the medicines I need. Okay, that's one perspective. I have heard that before, people saying things like that. But I want to say that there is hope in advocacy. and self-advocacy. Now, I want to give you a little definition of advocacy. Self-advocacy is the action of representing oneself and one's views or interests. It's the action of representing you and your views and your interests. Now, that's different than demanding. Okay, see, demand, the definition of a demand is an insistent request made as if by a right. Now, what can happen here, I think, when it comes to emergency rooms, is that you're in such a level of pain, I could very easily shift to demand. I demand that you give this to me. I demand, and my voice can, as it can happen right now, my voice can increase. Words that are not necessarily the kindest words will come out of my mouth, potentially could happen. And aggression, demands, loud volume, that's not advocacy. It's not. And I think the hope, I didn't say the hope for us is going to be demand. The hope is self-advocacy. How do we make our requests known in a way that is representing our needs and respectful to the people who are helping us? So there's different types of examples for advocacy. Now, just in general in life, not even when it comes to having a sickle cell pain crisis or any of those kind of things. I mean, we advocate for ourselves, pretty much we have opportunity to do that every day. Be it that, it's a teacher in school, and I say, oh, this grade, I don't know why I got this test score like this. And what do? Do I just let that be, or do I talk to the teacher about that? Or there's things where, you're waiting for a table at a restaurant. How many times are you going to say, excuse me, how long do I have to wait here for this table? There's different scenarios in life where we always are advocating for ourselves. And I think, too, we have to think about, when it comes to advocacy, is what kind of person are you? Are you a person when you feel like something is unfair, or like this waiter has been rude, or you're waiting for your oil change, seems like it took forever, or whatever situation it is? Are we as someone who's passive? Who just goes, oh, well, I guess they know what they're doing, okay, Or are we aggressive? Hey, excuse me, I need the answer right now, please, thank you. How are we just when we're healthy? When we're not in pain? Because I think it's really good to reflect on ourselves with that, because how we are, I would say, just in any other day, is only going to be exaggerated or increased when we're in an emergency crisis situation. So if I'm someone who is passive, and just because I'm waiting for a table, and these other people have been going in front of me, and I don't know what's happening, how am I going to be when I'm now in a crisis situation? Or vice versa, if I'm already a person who's very aggressive in my advocacy, how much is that going to be ramped up when I'm in a crisis situation? So then I think it's important, when it comes to advocacy, 4 main keys I want to give to you. One of them is to know yourself. Before you are in a situation where you're in an emergency, think about, yeah, exactly, how am I? Am I someone who gets very upset very quickly when things are not going my way? How's my attitude when I'm very hungry or very tired? Because often when you're in a sickle cell crisis, I'm hungry or I'm tired. Am I cranky? Am I moody? Do I get quiet? What is that? Who are you in those types of situations? And know yourself. Be honest with yourself on that. Another key here is know what you need to be successful. Now, one thing for me which is helpful when I went to the emergency room is that I had the doctors, my clinic, my sickle cell clinic, I had their numbers with me. Because I know what I need to be successful in that environment. I knew that, hey, I need to be able to, if they don't understand what I need here medically, I want to give them to someone who does know what I need. That's going to help me be successful. Or sometimes you could have a care plan that's designed by your medical team. That has your history, and you can make sure, or you can ask from your other clinic to let the emergency room doctor know your care plan or your pain plan, those kind of things. So I encourage you to think through, before we get into a place of crisis and emergency, what are some things that could help you be successful in how you deal with these situations? Another key here is know what you need. I know when I go to the emergency room, I don't need Tylenol coating. I don't need some of the other little things here and there. What I need is morphine. I've been taking morphine as a kid when I had a major pain crisis. Definitely when I was a child, probably about 9 or even younger. So here I am now as an adult, and I know what I need. So it's not even a guess for me. If they suggest another thing, well, we're going to start off with something a little bit lighter. Well, I know that little bit lighter. I know that it's not going to be the thing I need. So I know what it is. I don't know necessarily the amount, because every pain crisis is different, but I think it's important to say to them, to voice, to advocate for yourself, and say what you need. But if morphine is not your thing, but if something else is, then then I think you should definitely encourage you to know that. Another thing too, because the fourth key is to know your rights. To know that you have a right to be there. You have a right to know what they're doing. You have a right to ask questions. And you have the right to refuse things too. If they say, we want to give you this, you can say, no, I don't want that. You have a right to say no. Now, they may have better understanding of some medical situations. That's true. But I think you also too have a right to know and to be involved in your process. It's you. You are working. You don't want to have them to be doing their thing and you're doing your thing. We need to be working together to best care for our needs. And so, some tips here to be a good advocate for yourself is to know, of course, yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, and know too how to communicate your needs effectively. And that's something really to ponder as well, is that being able to listen, but being able to talk in a way that, as I said, doesn't use profanity, doesn't use loud voices, even though you're in the midst of pain, and I get it. I get it. I've lived it. So I know that. But you want to be in a place where you can talk very respectfully, but very assertively about what your needs are in the situation. You also, too, need to be willing to ask questions. And I think especially in that situation, there's no wrong question. There's no stupid question. And so I think it's important to be able to ask questions of things. So let's say you do all these things. You're a good advocate. You know yourself. You know what you need. You have, your doctor or someone like Gwen or Evelyn on speed dial. They talk to the emergency room person. And they still don't give you what you need. Or you're still waiting hours before you get the first treatment of pain medication. But see, the thing is, friends, advocacy is not just at the moment you are experiencing an emergency. It's a lifestyle. So even if you go through that kind of suffering and then finally the whole experience is over, I encourage you to still be an advocate by going to patient services the next day at the hospital. Because there are patient services, there's patient advocates, there's people in the hospital setting their job, their full-time job is to listen to patients' complaints.
Right.
So even if you go through this and they don't hear about you, they're not going to know if there's any problems in the emergency room that they need to address. They're not going to know that. See, another thing I didn't tell you about emergency rooms, not only do they have a triage issue, but they also have sometimes staffing issues or workflow issues that are not in any of our control. So you might go one day and you're waiting for 2 hours. It's because so-and-so didn't show up for work that day, and so Joan had to do a double shift, and da-da-da-da-da-da. You know? And so, but if you don't talk to the patient, the person who is the patient services person, you know, they may not be able to look into that and realize, oh, there was a problem here last night in the emergency room. So it's important for you to say, it ain't over just because of pain over. I want to make sure that they know how my experience was. You know, they need to know that. So you can go, when you're feeling better, you can go back to the hospital and talk to patient services, someone in that department, and talk about what happened. And if you do that, I would encourage you to write down or to document the type of experience you had. So when you go to the emergency room and you're like, wow, I've been waiting 2 hours? Put that in on your phone, a note on your phone or whatever. It says, okay, I got here at 11, but I didn't get seen until 2 or something. You know, put that in your phone. How long did it take you to get an IV? See, that's an issue too. Sometimes because of staffing or other issues happening, it may take them a long time to get an IV. Put that in there. Who's the provider, the emergency room doctor that saw you? What was their name? You can, if you can, your very best, if you're having a bad experience, try to jot these things down so that you go back to them and you can tell them it's data, because data communicates. A lot clearer than raising my voice, raising my volume. If I go to that patient services rep and say, this is what happened, this is who it was, this is when it happened, this is what it did, and this is how it made me feel, they will take that all the way to the department's manager. You know, I used to, before I worked in the church, I used to work in the hospital setting. And just so you know, guest services is a big deal in the hospital setting. Because actually they're getting there's some laws that have gone in place that if their guest service numbers or their surveys drop, the hospital will actually lose some funding from the state or from the nation, from the federal funding. So they're really, really wanting to make sure the guest experience is happening very successfully. So if you come in there and say, my experience was not successful, and this is what happened, they should be able to respond to that. And so that might not help that situation you were in the emergency room the day before, but it will help your future, and it will help people like me who come in after you. You know, because they would have been able to say, oh, we need to educate our staff on sickle cell pain. Because that's one of the things too, as I've looked into this research, that's one of the things that's going to help change the emergency room dynamic is going to be education. Often they see us in pain. Sometimes they don't even know what sickle cell is. I've had to explain while I'm in pain. I've had to explain the condition, you know? And then, so they don't even know. Or sometimes if they do know, once again, they might think you're an addict. Why you come here? Weren't you just here? We see in our records, you were just here last week. You're sick already? Again? See, they may think you're an addict. Or they may think you're exaggerating the pain, the moans. Like, can someone really be in that much pain? You know, see, all this stuff is going on in the mind. What they just need to have is education. You know, they just need to be educated. And so being able to continue to voice your needs, your concerns, before, during, or even after the event will help them educate their staff, which ultimately later will help you when you go back there, and also help me and help all the other people behind us too. All right, so then, I actually have maybe some time for Q&A here too.